So this is the Harley-Davidson Sportster S. Yes, I know we're a little bit late, but well, it's finally here. Now, this bike, along with the Pan America, which we featured here in MotoDeal, is Harley-Davidson's attempt at kind of breaking from tradition and entering the new world of motorcycling. Now, notice I didn't say the live wire because that is its own beast. The question is, did the Milwaukee-based company do enough to appease its aging old fan base and at the same time gain new, younger following? Or did they do too much and kind of alienate both? Well, that's what we're going to find out today in this episode of Beyond the Ride. So the beating heart of the Sportster S, a very familiar looking engine. We've probably all seen this on pretty much all Harley-Davidsons up to this point, but it does look a little bit more modern, doesn't it? This is the Revolution Max 1250T motor. And as its name suggests, it really is a revolution since this is the first liquid-cooled and most powerful Sportster ever. The mighty motor punches out 120 horsepower and 125 Newton meters of torque. Now, to keep bumps at bay, you have a 43mm adjustable inverted fork up front and a adjustable piggyback monoshock at the rear. Stopping power is provided by a radially mounted monoblock 4-piston Brembo system up front and a floating single-piston Brembo at the rear. Now, with the amount of power that this bike has, I'm kind of shocked that they only went with one brake up front. Weird. But I'll say this though, it does look better without that other disc on this side, right? So maybe they went for style over function, not too sure. We'll go over the brakes a little bit more when we go out for our ride. And while we're here up front, take a look at this massive front tire, 160 by 70 on 17s. That's even wider than the rear tires on a Duke 390. And over at the rear, you have a massive 180 by 70 tire on 16s. And we'll speak about how it feels later on, but just by looking at it, it does seem really imposing, doesn't it? So let's talk about the aesthetics. Well, I just love the look. I think it's absolutely stunning, but I am a sucker for classic looking bikes. And you do feel the stares when you're out on the road and people are kind of just glancing at you like, who is that? And Jack even told me, because Jack had the bike longer than I had, and he told me that one time he was in a cafe and a bunch of people actually came up to the bike and started taking photos of it. It's a looker, definitely. So all the lights are LED front and back, and at the price point of the bike, that's pretty much what you would expect. I do love this pill-shaped headlight. You know, the last time I've seen this was on with the first Harley-Davidson I actually rode, which was the Fat Bob, and I think it kind of works with the cruiser that this bike is, right? I mean, it works. I think it looks fantastic. So the rear of the bike looks great. I mean, she's got a nice ass. Let me just say that out loud. I love the lines. I love the way just the bike looks from here. I mean, it's sexy. It's super, super sexy. And, you know, I just don't like these things, right? It kind of ruins the look of the bike. And what's kind of funny to me is that usually when you have something like this on a motorcycle, it has a little bit of a cover right here to prevent the water splashing all the way to the rider, actually going to the helmet of the rider sometimes. This doesn't have it. I'm not too sure why it's even here. It's really just for the light and the plate. When you look at the cockpit of the bike, right? I mean, I think it looks pretty interesting, except that there's so many buttons right here. Kind of reminds me of the Pan Am a little bit, but it's a Harley. You typically don't have all of these little gadgets and gizmos aplenty. I will say this though, I love that the bar end mirrors really go well with the rest of the bike. I think the round bar end mirrors look good because it matches the dash as well. And that dash, even though it's a little small, I think looks perfect. I think it's something that the bike really needs. It would look so much better like this than if it was like a square or a rectangle or something. And this really gives you all the different information that you need from the bike. Plus, it also does have 3 riding modes. It has road, rain, and sport. I mean, you know, phone connectivity, you can play music, maps. It's pretty funny to say that a Harley-Davidson has so much tech, but it does. It kind of does. It's kind of similar to that of the Pan America. And again, this is a new age Harley-Davidson, right? It's not your Lolo's or your dad's Harley. It's a new one. Fuel tank capacity is 11.8 liters, which is on the small side. And Harley-Davidson claims that you can get 20 kilometers per liter, but we got closer to 15 kilometers per liter. And well, that's actually not so bad. I actually was thinking it was gonna be worse. It's got a wet weight of 228 kilograms, which is actually on the heavy side, and a seat height of 765 millimeters. I am 5'6", with a 764 millimeter inseam, and not a problem whatsoever. Take a look at that, completely flat foot. But on a bike like this, I should be flat foot. If you're still tippy-toeing on a bike like this, a little bit of a problem. So let's talk about the riding position of the bike. As you can see, it's got front controls. Almost, kidding. So as you can see, it has front controls. Not my favorite position. Also, because, I don't know, maybe I'm, being the height that I am, I do have to reach forward a little bit more than I would like to. And with this kind of body position, I don't feel like I have excellent control of the bike. It's not so bad, but I just think I would have preferred either the handlebars to go up a little bit more or mid controls. Now, speaking of mid controls, Harley-Davidson will actually give you an option for mid controls, which will go right about here. And I think that would have been so much better. I just prefer this angle a whole lot more than that. With this, I could feel like I'm in better control of the bike. I could apply more pressure on the pegs if I need to. Maybe even kind of stand a little bit if I'm coming to some, I don't know, big potholes that we have here in the Philippines. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of front controls. What can I say? I know a lot of people out there, especially Harley-Davidson riders, I know they love the front controls because, you're chilling and relaxing on the highway, but it's just my personal preference. It would have been better with mid. All right, so let's do a quick sound test, shall we? Doesn't really sound like a Harley. In fact, it kind of sounds almost European. Okay, so the first thing that you will notice if you find yourself sitting in the saddle of a Sportster S is the weight of the front, especially given the size of the front tire. At low speeds, it is quite heavy to maneuver, especially in tight city traffic, which we encounter every day here in Manila. You feel it as well at speed. The initial turn in feels quite heavy, but honestly, it's actually, pretty fun to lean into a corner. Lean, just don't scrape the foot pegs too much. Now, the brakes aren't the strongest point of this bike, sadly. It definitely does come to a stop when you need it to, but for sportier, spirited riding, so to speak, it does feel a bit lacking. Again, the mid controls would have been so much better for me. And if the handlebar does go back a little bit more, sure. But at this current ergonomics, at this current riding position, not my thing. Now, what I do really love about this bike though is this motor. It packs a solid punch down low and you can really wring it out.
all the way to the top, and it's just really, really quick. And when you don't want to ride like a maniac, aka Earl and EJ, cruising down the highway or around the city with very light traffic is actually, the engine is really, really smooth, and it's become so much more enjoyable. I'm going to say this though, heat is definitely going to be an issue. The exhaust come up high on the side. I mean, the exhaust is right there. I can feel it on my right leg. And it does kind of feel like a flat tracker, so to speak. And it does, I have to admit, it does look cool, but the heat radiating from the side is going to get you. And it's going to get a little bit uncomfortable, especially when the traffic is bad. The suspension isn't the greatest, to be honest. There isn't much travel front and back, and you might find yourself bottoming out the suspension more often than you'd like. I would just wish this thing was a little bit more comfortable. I mean, they could have probably put, more comfortable seat. At the very least, put a little bit more comfortable seat. Knowing, of course, that the suspension is not going to be great. This bike is really meant for the open road, right? You're supposed to get on this bike, ride on the freeway, and just, keep on going. That's kind of what this thing was built for. It's not meant to ride around the city. It's not meant to go, off-road. I mean, it's not meant, to do much, it's not meant to attack the twisties, to take on the track. It's not meant to do any of those things. It's really just meant to get on the freeway and go. And, that's the purpose of this bike. And when you're doing that, it's actually really good. It's excellent. However, you have to imagine also that, the fuel consumption isn't great. The fuel tank capacity isn't great. So you can't go very far. And it's a Sunday ride. I definitely would say it's a Sunday ride, but not much else. You can't put a seat for the pillion in the back. That's an option, but I think it's going to ruin the look of the bike. The way the bike looks like this, like right now, it's sexy, right? It has so much more appeal. You add that pillion seat in the back, I think it's going to ruin it. It's just not my cup of tea if you're gonna, ride two up on this bike. I think any type of rider would be able to use it, even those who are not really beginners, but been riding, maybe 6 months to a year, because of the height of the bike. Yes, the bike is gonna be, too powerful for some people. The bike's gonna be too heavy for some people. But because the seat height is not very high, it's not, you don't need to be, more advanced to ride it. I think it's pretty easy to ride and pretty approachable for most riders out there. I recently got to ride with the Mad Dogs and the Hog. And, when I would chat with them and I was talking to them in our 2-day ride, I got to understand more about the Harley-Davidson community. And when you buy a Harley, that's kind of what you're doing, right? You're not just buying the bike, you're not just buying the image, you're not just buying into that. You're also buying into the lifestyle and the community, which is Harley-Davidson. It's a very loyal fan base. It's a very hardcore fan base, and they're very specific in what they like. Their personalities are also quite, they're quite similar to each other. And when you think about it, Harley-Davidson is such a popular brand worldwide. You see it all over TV, you see it all over movies. It's that image of a motorcycle rider. You know what I mean? It's that, right? That's kind of, when you buy a Harley, you're buying into that as well. And that's something to point out.
So in conclusion, well, it's got a impressive engine, lots of power, lots of tech. I think it's good looking. I mean, it's downright sexy. And with a price tag of 1,150,000 Philippine pesos, it's actually right there where the competition is. And it's got more, bells and whistles on the bike. Yes, I'm not a fan of the riding position. I'm not a fan of the comfort. And I don't think it's a bike that I would take out on the daily. However, for the right rider, I do believe there are going to be people out there that are going to see this bike, test it out, and love it. They're going to gush about this bike. I mean, I can see why. It's just not going to be me. For more information about this bike and other MCs out there, log on to www.motodeal.com.ph. This has been Jinno. I hope you guys enjoyed. Going beyond the ride.